living organisms in the world, including human beings, originate from simple one-cellular organisms through evolution. And from simple single-cell organisms, multi-cell organisms have been formed through evolution, and from the multi-cell organisms, more complicated organisms have been formed with organs and with specific functions. And in human beings, this is a kind of a highlight. Human beings are a kind of a highlight in that sense. But at the same time, they get sick as plants. They get sick as animals. They get sick as other living organisms. So they are on the same basis. And this is what we really have to understand. To use plants or other organisms to cure our diseases.
Goed. I see prescribing cannabis as an enrichment of my therapeutic arsenal. I have more in my suitcase than only my injections, my ampoules, my suppositories. I do have a solution for some desperate patients, and that makes me feel very comfortable, because I've seen a lot of positive effects in prescribing cannabis to a selected group of patients.
I have problems with high eye pressure. It causes a lot of headaches. I also have a lot of pain because of an inflammation in my right knee. It makes my whole leg stiff and painful. And because all of this, I sleep very bad at night.
I think as a pharmacist, you have to help people. So, and helping people can be curing people, so with medicines. But I think also with this medicine, this medical marijuana, you call it, you can improve the quality of life of people. And especially if you talk with those typical patients, you see that people really are helped with it.
I always have pain, especially in the legs. That never goes. And there's always day and night.
You heard already on television that cannabis could have a good effect on MS.
And you can see, well, once they were sitting at home, couldn't do anything, and then after using this, after smoking it or drinking tea of it, then well, they have a life again. So they can walk, they have a social life. So I think it's a big improvement of life of people. So I think that's also our job. So that's why I supplied medical marijuana.
Now I take 1 puff of cannabis at night. I go to bed and sleep very well. My eye pressure is a lot lower. I do not have any headache anymore. And the pain in my knee and stiffness in my leg is gone.
If I count them, I get a resistance to it. It's too much. So if I realize too much, it's so much pills. That's also the problem with those medicines. You have to take them exactly on time in order to prevent resistance of the virus. And they give quite a lot of side effects. That's the worst part about it. They help very well for the infection, but the side effects are quite bad. They make me nauseous, vomiting sometimes, but that I can control with medical marijuana. I have side effects like damaging of my nerves at the end of my fingers, my hands and my feet. So therefore I can't walk that good, and I have problems with opening bottles and looking up papers, for instance. I don't feel that well. I can't easily turn the pages. These are side effects. One of the side effects is too that you don't have a good appetite. Losing weight is a problem. Eating is a problem as a side effect of the medicines. So therefore I also use medical marijuana because it gives you a good appetite, and it also works against the pain in my fingers and in my hands. At the moment I don't feel that comfortable, but I know that when I've smoked a joint, the pain is going less, I start to burp, the tension in my belly is disappearing, and I don't feel nauseous anymore. So then I'm able to do the normal things of life, and otherwise I would be inside all the time, and my horizon wouldn't be much further than the edge of the toilet pot.
If you start with a botanical identity, then all the names like hemp and marijuana are all referring to the same plant, the same species, which is called Cannabis sativa. In the 50s and the 60s, we had still a so-called species, Cannabis indica. And that's referred to the fact that Cannabis sativa was known in Europe as the plants from which one produced fibers. And the plant cannabis plant, which was called Cannabis indica, mainly coming from outside Europe, let's say India, and it was known that the resin of cannabis was much richer in that species. During the colonial time that Britain was in India, it was the British physicians that came to know cannabis. They have been introducing it as a drug to fight pains to Europe. And if we go into European history, we see that witches have been used much earlier than that, the hemp. So the witches in Europe and the Indo-Germanian era were familiar with cannabis in that sense of as a medicine, as a drug, having effects that are more than today. This use came into the professional pharmaceutical circuit, and that's how it came into the European pharmacopoeias as a drug. A pharmacopoeia is a law book of medicines. So if something is accepted as a monograph, an article in the pharmacopoeia, it has a legal position. And this is how cannabis came into European drug arsenal. And the new era that we have entered by studying genomes and studying proteomes, that are the proteins and the genetic properties that we have that are basic to us. We are going to enter the new era in terms of that there are not only 500 sites where a drug can be active, but 10 to 50,000 of these sites where a drug can be active. That's characteristic for the new era that we have entered. And plants can play a major role in this process.
We are now at the Laboratory of Natural Products in the Faculty of Medicine of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the School of Pharmacy. This laboratory does research on various aspects of plant products. One of the major problems we have been investigating for many years is the cannabis plant, as well as materials present in our body, in the body of animals, that whose action is completely parallel to the action found with the compounds in the plant. So we are working in two fields. On one hand, the plant products and derivatives of the plant products. On the other hand, the brain material from animals, which does the same thing that the plant products do. Cannabis is a plant with quite exceptional activity. There is no other plant that has the same constituent and has the same activity. It's unique. In many respects, it's unique. When an MS patient, as a matter of fact, anybody who smokes cannabis, at least one of the compounds present in cannabis, tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the active compound in cannabis, goes into the brain, goes into to the nerve cells, and binds to the receptor, to the cannabinoid receptor. And then the cannabinoid receptor starts a series of reactions which reduce some of the symptoms of the multiple sclerosis. Now, why should the brain spend energy in order to make a receptor for a compound that is present in a plant? It doesn't make sense. But the sense is that it has receptors for something that the brain produces, and it uses these receptors to start a reaction. So obviously, for us at least, was that the brain produces compounds which will activate these receptors. And just by chance, THC also does that. So we started looking for these compounds that may be present in the brain or may be present in the periphery, in the spleen or other parts in the gut. And in 1992, we were lucky to be able to identify very, very, very small amounts of material which binds to these receptors, which were discovered by Drs. Howlett and Dr. Munro in Cambridge. And these receptors were stimulated by the compound found in the brain as much as it was stimulated by THC.
Grow here by the GAP guidelines. These are international guidelines for growing herbal medicine. Here we grow complete biologic organic, which is very important at this moment. Plants only get water, and sometimes when they really have shortage, we give them a little bit of organic fertilizer. But it's very low dosage. This plant is a crossing of two kinds of cannabis plants, the Cannabis sativa and the Cannabis indica. The crossing of these two plants make very strong varieties, and with strong I mean high in THC levels. The process of the plant begins here. This is section 4, cell 0. Here are the mother plants where we take the cuttings from. As you can see, this person is making cuttings of the plant, and these cuttings we put in special rooting blocks. These rooting blocks make that they are rooted in about 2 or 3 weeks. After that, we put the rooted cuttings into small pots that they can grow for another week. If they grow for another week, we put them in other cells, especially for the breeding of the plant, the flowering state. They have to stay about 8 or 9 weeks in these flowering cells. After that, they are ready for harvesting. We bring them to section 3, where the clippers are. The clippers are people who clip the plant. They take off the leaves and the stalks of the flowered heads, control the flowered heads if they are good of quality, without fungus or burning spots. And after that, they make an A choice and a B choice. Then the drying process begins, where they have to dry for another few weeks. And when it's controlled, especially checked if the THC, CBD and CBN levels are okay, then the batch is good for packaging. After packaging, we let it sterilized by gamma radiation and let it control by a big government laboratory in Holland for fungicides, pesticides and heavy metals.
Well, there are studies about this cannabis, so you also learn it at university. You work also with the THC acid, so you can also isolate the stuff. And you know how it works. You can see some relaxation, you see some... it works also in the senses, in the nerves. So you know how it works just in theory. The only way why it shouldn't work in the way you can buy it in the coffee shop is that you don't know how much THC is in it. Now with this medical cannabis, that's well researched, well developed. It's pure. There are not there's not so much waste in it, so you know how much comes to the patient. So that's why you can study how it works. So you can also predict how it can work. So in that way, it's medicine.
The stimulation by THC is important in pain. When we feel pain, pain is transmitted, it tells the brain, let's say I hurt myself here, it will go to the brain and the brain will say you feel pain, and the brain then will produce this compound, anandamide, which stimulates the receptor, and the pain slowly goes down. Now, it's not good for all types of pain, it's mostly for prolonged pain.
Oké, laatste AP alsjeblieft. Ja. Lekker. Verder, ja, toch even het facet geveegd. Ja. Oké, stop maar. Dit is een mooie.
I'm an anesthesiologist, and the first place is I'm a transplantation anesthesiologist for liver transplantations.
Okay, AP.
Apart from that, I'm working 1 week in a month in the pain center here, especially for cancer pain. And this is what I'm treating. Yeah, well, cannabis is one of the many drugs we use for palliative care. We take all kinds of drugs that make their life easier, even illegal drugs. For instance, heroin in Holland is considered as a dangerous drug because it gives the patient euphoria. He comes in a good mood. But especially in the palliative care, we don't mind the patient is in a good mood, so I give them heroin. And compared to heroin, cannabis is a very small thing. It's a very safe drug, and the amounts of cannabis that we prescribe for these patients do not give a feeling of stonedness at all. We dose them in a dose that we expect medical effects. There's one new, a very big reason that we apply cannabis, and it is its unexpected big role in the pain process in the body. We discovered in the last 10 years that we have endocannabinoids. In each body, even if you have never smoked a joint, is a certain amount of self-made cannabinoids. And they play a very important role in pain transmission. They regulate the way that pain comes to your brain. And so by using the receptors that your own cannabinoids use as well, you can influence pain. For instance, it's possible if somebody has good pain relief from morphine, but has nausea or has obstipation, so he should stop the morphine. If you give them a little bit of cannabinoids in some cases, like 20 micrograms per kilogram, which is a very small amount, you can diminish the amount of morphine that you're giving until half of the original amount. So they get less morphine but the same effect, but less side effects. And this is a new way that we are using cannabinoids.
Because pain is not one thing, there are many different types of pain. Cannabis was widely used in the 19th century against migraine. Queen Victoria had migraines. Apparently her doctor gave her cannabis, at least this is what we understand from his papers. In the meantime, people, our group as well, found that THC does a few things, and these compounds in the brain, in the periphery, do the same. For example, appetite. Appetite is quite strongly potentiated by both THC and the compounds found in the brain, anandamide, for example.
For loss of appetite, yes, it is my first choice. This is a common knowledge that you, from smoking marijuana, you get a hunger kick, like they call it. Each father or mother of adolescents who have smoked the whole evening expects the refrigerator to be empty next morning. Well, everybody knows that it stimulates appetite, and that's what it does. The patients who don't eat at all start eating again and start gaining weight.
Yeah. Medical marijuana on its own wouldn't have saved me. It looks like it has also an antiviral working, but you can't count on it to suppress the infection. But it made it possible for me to swallow these terrible pills with the terrible side effects all the time.
Probably the widest use of either THC or the compounds we produce in the brain, namely 2-AG, anandamide, and so on, is in multiple sclerosis, which is also, in this respect, nerve damage. It has been shown, first of all, by just people that have multiple sclerosis, smoke cannabis and show that some of the symptoms are improved.
Most of them prefer to smoke, which is quite important, because if you smoke you also get the cannabidiol in your bloodstream, which is anxiolytic. That means that relieves you from fear and tension. so that it has a function there.
Cannabidiol is a compound which is found in high concentrations in the plant. It also has some effect on multiple sclerosis. So all these things have to be investigated.
Two ways are the most used. One way is smoking it, so you have those typical water pipes. I don't know if that's the real word of it. And you can also order that at the same firm as we order the marijuana. And then they get a description how to smoke it. So then, but they have to smoke it with pipes. Well, you can make some joints, but you don't know how much you really use and how much is coming in. So if you use the pipe, then it's better. It works better. The second way to use it is to make teas. So you take 1 gram of this marijuana and then you take it in 1 liter of hot boiled water, fresh boiled water, and then you can cool it and then take 1 cup each time. But the taste of the tea is mostly quite bad. That's what we. It tastes not very well, so that's why you can also add some additives to it to make it better.
Yeah, there are side effects. Your eyes get red, that's one thing. The nauseousness goes away, it relaxes. That's, I think, probably the reason why it relaxes my stomach. It also gives you a dry mouth. You might get a little bit euphoric from it, but well, it's not that bad.
Well, if you use more, then it's the same as well, the first effect you know of marijuana, so that you can be a bit dizzy, that you have those very vivid dreams or something like that.
I said, yeah, listen, but marijuana, maybe when you take more, maybe it works better. Dus she used, I gave her 1 draw on top of the road. She got high.
I read awfully slow and I couldn't really properly think.
1 draw away and it was okay.
I can cook again, I can cut meat again. Lots of little things I can do again.
You're likely to see more sunshine at the end of the tunnel than there really is. And that's not a bad case, because it also gives you a positive mind.
And in the pharmacy itself, it's been used in the same way as you have morphine or something like that, just opioid medicals. So we use it in the same legal way as we should do with codeine or morphine or something like that.
Medicine and drugs is in fact the same thing, only in the slang. Drugs in Holland and Europe has received another meaning. But basically, every substance that alters your body is a drug. And some of these alterations are medically, and other of those alterations are what they call recreational.
Cannabis as a medicine is here to stay. The cat is out of the bag. You can't put it back in. And, you know, think of it. In this country, where, that is, in the United States, where drugs are promoted by the drug companies, physicians are educated to use them by the drug companies, applied with samples to give to their patients over. The fact that cannabis has made such inroads in this country is a testimony to its effectiveness. That doesn't happen if we're talking about some placebo effect. These people who have these disorders, an AIDS patient meeting with an AIDS patient in a support group, hears and sees what it's done for him, that's powerful. And then he passes it on. It cannot be reversed. I had been brainwashed, just as every other American citizen had been, about cannabis. We had been led to believe that it was a frightfully dangerous drug, that people who used it were prone to violence, were prone to sexual excess, whatever that is, would lose their memories, all sorts of things.
No problem with that. The patients have heard it, they know that it works, they are not afraid of it. What you heard from before, well, if you get cannabis, you get addicted and you are starting to steal car radios or something. They don't feel like that. They know it's simple, and even old people, they're not afraid of strange things, of pink elephants or something. They're very realistic in it. And it's like what John Lennon said, if whatever gets you through the night, it's all right. Everything that relieves this last very precious period and makes it worthwhile, you take, and you will too.
I think the danger of the smoke has been grossly exaggerated. It isn't as though we're talking about the equivalent of smoking a pack or 2 packs a day. People use, you know, let's say people with arthritis, with the chronic pain of arthritis, may smoke it 3 or 4 times a day. People with Crohn's disease may smoke it a couple. Most people, for most things, just smoke it maybe once a day as a medicine. What is the risk to the lungs? I mean, I'm not convinced that that risk is as much as living in the atmosphere of Houston, Texas, as smoking marijuana several times a day.
I think it's nonsense that people do not get the medicines they really need because there is an attitude or there is a taboo about it that it should only be for recreational use, and it's nonsense. It's proof that it worked. And it's working for a lot of people. It's working for me. And a lot of HIV patients use it to be able to swallow their medicines.
And smoking it, mind you, smoking the natural product allows you to titrate it very precisely. You know, you can, if it's nausea you want to defeat, you just get to that point and then stop. You take a pill and, you know, maybe you've taken enough, but you won't know for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Or maybe you've not taken enough and you've been suffering from this nausea all that time. Much more preferable to smoke it and get the relief right away.
The 3 things that we know today is enhancement of appetite, multiple sclerosis, vomiting again after cancer chemotherapy. Now, the last thing is not widely used because there are some pretty good drugs against vomiting after cancer chemotherapy, but it is very useful. For example, quite a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I think, we tried THC, rather high doses, in children that were undergoing cancer chemotherapy. And these children were having a bad time, a lot of vomiting, a lot of nausea. They didn't want to get treated. There were many problems. They had problems. Their families were suffering. That was a terrible situation. And we started giving them THC. We gave THC 400 times. We didn't see a single case of vomiting or nausea in these children.
While people certainly suffered from nausea and vomiting, it was, I mean, the nausea a cancer chemotherapeutics is way off the scale in terms of intensity. You can feel that nausea right down to your fingernails. And so that was something new, and it was very important. Now, it's true, we have very good anti-nauseant drugs now, like ondansetron. But for some people, cannabis works better than ondansetron, and it's certainly a lot less expensive if you're in a situation where your health insurance doesn't cover it or what have you.
There is nothing today against stroke, and stroke is brain trauma, basically. So chances are that it will be useful against brain trauma and stroke. As a matter of fact, it is probably very good also against nerve gas damage. Remember, several years ago somebody opened a can of nerve gas in Japan, in the underground in Japan, and 10 people died and about 1,000 had brain damage. Well, this compound may solve this problem.
I am convinced that cannabis, that we will someday look back and wonder why we treated this substance the way we did. That in fact, we are going to learn that it is quite a remarkable medicine. So I predict that when we as a society overcome this enormous foolishness which has imposed so much suffering on people. That is to say, if I've got a serious disease, like multiple sclerosis, that's anxiety producing enough to have to worry about the law, because the medicine that makes me feel better and does most for me is illegal. That's a kind of unnecessary suffering, both because it imposes this anxiety, and two, because it would deny the patient of what is considered by him or her the best relief.
My message would be, if you can improve your quality of life with taking marijuana and be able to do your normal things again, to take a walk outside with the dog, to be able to do your shopping again, to wake up in a normal way without vomiting or feeling nauseous all the time. You're crazy if you don't use it.